So today, because it's summer, I want us to spend some time thinking about play in its largest context. And may we take this out of our summer experience and hold on to it all year long. In some ways, this is a bit of a follow-up to last week's sermon when I talked about improvisation, because improvisation is always a part of play. And it's an essential skill if we want to be more adaptive and less stressed. Play can help us become more creative and more adaptive and more attentive, while paradoxically being non-attentive. It allows us to be open to surprises, and instead of trying to predict or control every situation or outcome, it allows space for different possibilities to emerge. And we only have to let them happen. So let's see if today's sermon stretches your idea of play and playtime in your life. Well, I think we can all agree play is found all around us. And it's been part of the human experience and the animal experience, I think, for a very long time. A few days ago, I was watching Cooper hawks riding the thermals. I was watching harbor seals. They had first been eating and then they were just playing. I've seen kids running. I've seen people laughing as they are walking and talking together. Recently, I've also been enjoying the Hindu story of the creation of the universe. The Eternal One needed something to do and engaged in Leela, divine play. And behold, the Eternal One, the universe, was born. So let's just take a short bypass. I want you to hear what an expert has to say about play. And while I think it's not enough. So there was a Dutch linguist and historian, Johan Huizinga, who took a professional interest in play. And he's one of the first people who actually kind of studied play and then wrote about it. So that's how he got to be thought of as a little bit of an authority. And he describes play, and I'll quote, an activity which proceeds with certain limits of time and space in visible order, according to the rules freely accepted, and outside the sphere of necessity or material utility. The play mood is one of rapture and enthusiasm, and it is sacred or festive in accordance with the occasion. A feeling of exaltation and tension accompanies the action. End of quote. So before I was a minister, I was a social worker, and I spent a fair amount of time reading social science and, of course, observing children. And as a result, I have to really disagree that play was outside the sphere of necessity. Play is absolutely necessary. I also have to disagree with Huizinga about order and limits and time and space. I mean, yes, some games have that, some play has that, but I don't want us to be limited in that thought. And he was studying play in the context of medieval Renaissance and late Baroque periods. And he was studying people of leisure, not people working in the fields. So I would say the more stressful your life, the more necessary play is. The harder your job, the more necessary play is. Huizinga did add a more spiritual element. He says, in play, we move below the level of seriousness, as the child does, but we can also move above it in the realm of the beautiful and the sacred. But again, I would say children spend time in beauty and the sacred as well. We are not going to limit them at all. Play is essential in our lives. I know that for children, both human and mammals, play creates fitness and it hones the skills we need for life. They gain mastery. They play for the pure pleasure of it, occasionally at inopportune times. Brain and social science research tell us that interactive play makes us more empathetic. And there's a strong correlation between playful activity and success in other areas of life, competence in your vocation. And if you are prone to perfectionism or workaholism or have a high need for control and predictability, you need even more play in your life. I would imagine each one of us fits one of those categories, right? So whether you live alone or whether you live with others, I want you to start thinking about making sure you set aside a little time and space in your day to find ways to be creative in play. Play can decrease demands we make on ourselves, and it shuts off that chatter going on in our minds. I will also, well, I don't know, this is an aside, but on the roof of my minister's office over here, the crows have been coming. And at first, they were so thumpy and noisy, I thought we had a raccoon up there. And I snuck out to take a look, and the crows sometimes were literally just crowing around, and other times they were using sticks as tools to clean the gutters, looking for little worms and bugs, etc. But sometimes they were just mucking it up. Anyway, it's really loud. It happens at about 10 a.m. It completely gets me, it completely takes me off whatever task I'm on, and I have to go run outside and check on what they're doing. So in thinking about play, I saw that Diane Ackerman had written a book called Deep Play. And Diane Ackerman, she's a poet, she's also an author, and she's probably best known for one of her older books called A Natural History of the Senses. And if you haven't read Ackerman, I would strongly encourage you. Her use of language is just so deep and so imaginative. She went off to watch the penguins play in Antarctica, and then she headed north to observe dolphins at play. And she says, when we are involved in play, we are gripped in the experience. And I'll quote her, "When one enters the realm of deep play, the sacred playground where only the present moment matters, one's history and one's future vanish. One doesn't remember the past, the needs, the expectations, the worries, the real or imagined mistakes. The world is fresh, absorbing, and full of its own unique wisdom and demands. Being able to temporarily step outside normal life while keeping one's senses alert, to be vigorously alive without self-awareness." End of quote. She says there's different types of play. One, there's the type of play that's more organized, like a board game, but there's also the spontaneous. There's also sports, which does have rules and outcomes. And she says 4 things can happen to you to various degrees. When you are playing, you can lay aside your sense of self. You can shed time's continuum. You can sometimes be removed from pain for a time. And lastly, you sit in the absolute presence, watching life's ordinary miracles. So there's no analyzing, there's no explaining, there's no questing for logic. You're not making promises to yourself. There's no worry. You're just completely open to whatever is unfolding in front of you. And I agree with Ackerman. It's with surprise and regarding life's spectacles and underpinnings, and that you will start to feel an affectionate curiosity for the whole enterprise of creation. It doesn't matter what prompts the feeling. You can watch birds courting or goofing off on your roof, or you can be looking at a sky-blown, tumultuous sunset. Oh, I have to say, here in Montana, the evening when the winds come in and the beautiful colors, I can stay lost in that for an hour. No need to be thinking or saying things. And she says you can behold it all as a form of prayer. And if prayer doesn't work for you, it's a moving meditation. While I was back in Washington in April, I noticed this experience for myself. Not for the first time, but it was the first time I had any awareness around it. So a few of you know that I am a competent cyclist, and I think I've been in love with cycling since the age of probably 7. My aunt and uncle lived about 6 miles away, and my brother and I would ride our bikes over there for ice cream and then ride them home. I'm not speedy or fast, but I am steady, and I can finish a fair amount of miles, like 30, even 40, and have something left at the end of the day. For the last 12 years before moving to Bozeman, every Thursday I cycled with friends, and Thursday became my Sabbath day of the week. Cycling was always play, and it was the Sabbath. And notice the Sabbath didn't mean denying myself something. It meant making room for something. I love the endorphins that come with cycling. It's my version of the runner's high. And I love how all my senses become more acute. What I see, what I smell, what I hear, and the feeling of the bike handles under my palms. So when I was home in April, I was riding by myself one day on one of my favorite trails. I had gone 14 miles out on a slight upgrade, but with a really strong headwind in my face the entire time. So I wasn't experiencing play as I was riding back. But I made the turn, and then the play comes. I put the bike in the big gears. I didn't have to think about anything. I was noticing the smells. And I thought, there's going to be an espresso stand at the end of this. So I wasn't like the horse running for the barn exactly, but I was really feeling the joy of riding. And then I see someone coming towards me. And it kind of knocked me out of the meditative state of it. And all of a sudden time came back. And he says to me, "Wow, you must really be enjoying the tailwind." And pre-COVID, I would have said to him, "Yes, and I earned it." So listen to what's in that statement. Yes, and I earned it. First, I am telling him some basic information. I've gone up the hill and I'm coming back down, as opposed to I'm starting at the top and doing the loop the other way. And when people are out hiking or cycling, or even sometimes when you're at the gas station, if people might ask you questions because they want information about where you've just come from. How's the trail up ahead? So I thought, all right, I might just be giving him information. And I had slowed down. I would have been happy to talk to him. But secondly, hear that I earned the ease I was experiencing. It was only possible because I'd gutted through the hard parts. Ugh. Fun became a reward for suffering. It's not there for its own sake. That one has got to go. And third, I think it's a statement about self-esteem. Do we always have to earn it? Say no. No. You're already worthy. You don't need to earn it. So pre-COVID, I would have said yes, and I earned it. But I said, yeah, and it feels great. Which was sort of inviting him in. It's like you're going to have that same great experience when you are doing the downhill with the tailwind. I didn't have to communicate. I'd done my due diligence. I could just live into that moment that took me beyond time, worry about my mom, my grocery lists, my budgeting, what I'm going to say for my next Sunday sermon. I was just there living in the moment, and I was so stress-free. So let's think about not earning it in our daily lives, pushing back on that idea that we have to earn our leisure time, our enjoyment, or our playtime. We don't have to do, as Mary Oliver says in her poem, we don't have to crawl on our knees through the desert for 100 miles. Instead, just love what you love and engage in it wholly. So it's WHOLLY, but I think it's also HOLY. Engage in it wholly. So I would encourage you to read Diane Ackerman's book if you can find it out there, but I will warn you, it is elitist, and I find it discriminatory in a few parts, and the same is really true of my cycling story. It assumes you have the money and time to go visit the penguins in Antarctica. She and I also assume a certain level of able-bodiedness because we can't all play tag and run and bike and go on an African photo safari as much as we want to. That's why we need to make room in our lives for art and sexuality and music, and even worship can be play. I can lose myself in a puzzle for hours and hours. I would encourage you all to go out and try to find Wendell Berry's Heron. Whether you just have to drive to a place and be in your car looking for the heron, or whether you can get out and walk around for a bit, take a friend. The spirit of deep play is essential to the life of each person and to society. Ackerman agrees that it's inspired by visual arts, music, verbal arts. It's exploration, it's discovery. And she says, get swept up in play, feel balanced and creative and focused. It's the hallmark of being human. It reveals our need to seek a special brand of transcendence with all its passion. And sometimes it's thrill-seeking, but sometimes it's creativity. And engagement in religion, to her, seems inevitable. She says, religion seems an unlikely example of playing, but if you look at religious rites and festivals, you'll see play elements. And you'll also see how deep they can become. Music, decoration. This morning we have beautiful music, and we always have this incredible story going on that you can get lost in. Engaging in those elements sometimes can swallow time, but they should feel absorbing and rejuvenating. The word prayer, which is done in some churches, including ours, derives from the Latin precarious. So it contains the idea there is risk, like be careful what you're praying for. When we worship, we seek community, but we are also looking at the cosmic mysteries. It takes us out of our day-to-day thoughts, and it celebrates glories and mysteries. It invites transcendence. It invites us in community to seek deeper meaning. In a moment, we're going to explain a little sharing you're going to do with one another, but I'm going to leave you first with a reading from Mary Ann Radbacher that ends with a joke. Every once in a while, make not plans. Have the nerve to walk out the door and let possibilities introduce themselves. Wander, imagine, be surprised. Parades will find you. Travel in your armchair with a book, in your thoughts on a bike. Anything that will take you from the walls of your own knowing to someplace other. Other gestures, smells, words, tastes. Look upon the world through the windows other than your own. Dance by yourself if there's a room in your house. There's magic in movement, and there's a touch of laughter if you will let it. And tell a little joke to a child or a friend. What did the snail say when he climbed on the back of the turtle? Whee! Play can happen anywhere because you are the toy.